I got to meet with the manager of a Barnes and Nobles in Folsom, where I live, and he was very open to the ideas for me to get my book in the store. So we talked about doing a book signing and a ribbon cutting. And yeah, it's big news. It's big news because it's a major chain, and he was very enthusiastic about it. He's very open. He was very just his words were, "I can't wait to read your book." So it was like I mentioned to you, I was super emotional earlier because it it's a big deal. I don't know where it's going, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, that's all this work you've been doing, and it's been out for under a year, and the fact that it's already progressing this much is amazing. So, yeah, let's kick it off today. I'm excited. Welcome back, everyone. We have a great topic today, quantum family shifts, and even just in preparation for it just feels like this is the episode that is why we're actually doing this. It seems like we've kind of been building up for a really long time. And for me, I know it's really huge because we're going to explain a little bit like how we come to terms and like actually found more clarity with our relationship. So I actually want to start the book today in building this. When men have to struggle and become challenged, that is when we're at our best. We love to be comfortable and bask in our wins, yet what we love even more is the ability to conquer. And in that conquering, you can conquer what you fear most, and everything will come to you as whatever you please. And so I wrote this right before as I was thinking, because it's always our destiny when we face what we fear, and it actually unlocks us a lot more. And I think we're really applicable with today because we're talking about the shifts, and where it comes from is going through something very difficult. And so with everything that's been on, it's been a year already since I experienced that challenge, and it's been about 3 or 4 years for you. And so with tonight in continuing our theme of breaking down our relationship in the context of father-son dynamics and how we've shifted over time, it's allowed for us to become more communicable, allowed us to be stronger both individually and as a unit, as a family unit, excuse me. And part of that reason was the rites of passage that we did last year, or that I did last year and you did 3 years ago. And a buddy that did this as well. And it just feels like it's really falling to us right now. Um, where we both decided individually to go from boy to manhood. So I wanted to get your context of what rites of passage meant to you, give a little more context of why you decided to do that, and how it's allowed us to be more clear with our relationship.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the intro and Legacy Project number 9. Um, so it really has to do with this vision I had as a kid. Like I knew someday I was gonna do this. I didn't know how, I didn't know when. And it's interesting is when I was going through my stuff in 2020, I needed to let everybody know, keep in mind that I wasn't looking, and the keep in mind is like my son wasn't really talking to me. My daughters weren't talking to me. I pushed everybody away because of what I was going through and what I put them through and the hurt that I gave everybody. So the rites of passage was for me a way to get clean with me. It was a way for me to clear space with me. It was a way for me to handle stuff with God, with the spiritual part, with this little boy who I was fighting with this whole time. So in essence, when I went to the desert, I tell people this, like I literally broke my leg 2 weeks before. And that was even more confirmation of this thing called severance, where life was coming at me and I was being forced with these challenges that did I really mean what I said, which is I will never be that man again that I was during the time when I hurt all of you? Or was I going to let something like, I'll say it this way, a little broken leg cause me not to go do something that I knew in my heart I had to do? So there was this fork in the road for me. And it was an undeniable, I'm going to fucking go. Now I had to get approval from Rising Man movement. I had to get approval from the men that I was going with. So for me, it was this big, humongous thing that I had to confront. That I think the only way that I could do is in solitude, by myself, with a broken leg, literally not eating for 108 hours, and just dealing with the demon inside and all of these things that I had to go through. So that's just, so when I went through it, all I remember was this calmness about me because I no longer had to fight these demons because, and I go into the story a little bit later, but I was able to make peace with everybody.
Yeah, and so the biggest thing that I've heard of that too is there's a decision that was made
Yeah.
for him. That's it. Every person I think does this multiple
And
times.
you have to decide like what is it that's really important to you. And we go through this process on a grand scale of what we did and week to week, day by day as well, on what we're gonna do to really make this the best day ever, the best new part of our cycle better. And it's really interesting when you look back on when you decided to do that, and then once you actually go in there, that gap in between there is two different people. It's huge. Um, and it's just as important as the beginning part as in the aftermath of it, because I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but once you get awakened, everything kind of hits you. And we've mentioned this a lot of times in the past, but I think what was really key for when you decided to is it showed me what it is to make a hard decision, and seeing the aftermath of that is okay, this is just a glimpse of what I can experience.
I've never heard that from you. So thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to that in a second, but I also want to preface this. When I went to the desert, what everybody needs to know, like y'all didn't give a shit about me. Like my kids literally didn't reach out to me when I broke my leg, when I went to the desert. Nobody cared. I went to the desert not to get my family back. I went to the desert to make peace with me. This is a super important point. This is where accountability. Like I went to the desert not knowing what was going to happen other that I, Albert Chavez, had to make peace with whatever was going on my side. And when I came back, I wasn't expecting anybody to come in my life. I wasn't yearning for that. I was still just yearning just to live day by day. And your words mean so much. I've never heard that from you before because I always wondered like when I came back, like, because you never asked me questions about it really, was like, did it make an impact on you? And did it resonate to where you saw your dad in a different light? I've never heard that from you. So I would love to get more of your what you saw, and because it might not have been it at that point, but maybe over time you saw different changes and shifts in me that allow you to look at yourself a little differently and how you were shown. I don't know. So I'd love to kind of dive into that more.
Yeah, so I guess yeah, if it's the theme too of the shift and the dynamic too is I just remember I remember talking about it a lot with my friends and just like knowing like arm's distance, like knowing I wanted to do something like that down the line, that's vaguely when I started to do my own personal work. Was around that time as well. It was a little bit before then, but still I was trying to figure out what that was to me. And so I think you went right before COVID, or was it right? Yeah, it was during COVID. Yeah.
October 9th, 2020.
Yeah. So I was already doing a lot of that already. And during lockdown, trying to figure out like how I could do my own thing. And so once you decided to do that and then seeing what happened afterwards, that's when I was graduating
Yeah.
college. And so I kind of knew I needed to do something, but was just feeling this pushback for a while internally. And so,
Question: what did you see shift in me though? That's what my question is. Like you saw
yeah, it was just the way that you just carried yourself and just knew that, like, okay, there was a sense of leadership where I hadn't really noticed it before because I felt like before, like you were drinking a lot too, like beforehand. And so I think there was just this new like spirit, like you can almost see it like when their posture changes, their demeanor changes. And just like the leadership that was like subtly shown. It was not the same leadership as you were now, and it was still powerful enough to like be like, okay, that's something I can do,
Huh.
and I have all this time to give myself right now.
Interesting. Interesting. No, thank you for sharing. So on that note, while we're on that, when you went to the desert, right? What were your expectations versus what you came out of? Like what happened with you in that process?
I mean, you shared a little bit already with me, and I had some expectation or some stories that were shared with me from other guys, men's group. And so I knew it was going to be challenging. So for those who are just joining, this fasting experience, this desert experience was a 4-day fast by yourself. And so just in of itself, I knew bare minimum
In the desert, but there's nothing there in the desert.
and a pen and paper if you want. And so I knew bare minimum I was going to know that I could just do something that I didn't know I could do, like be by myself for 4 days and go through it while being very hungry.
Right. Survival mode, because again, another thing is, guys, we're not camping. Like Albert and I, we didn't camp. We're glampers. Like my ex-wife and I, his mom, we didn't do camping. So we're both literally in the middle of the desert on rock. So he's never experienced this before. This is the first time ever.
Right. And that's a good point too, is so going into that, I knew it was going to be difficult. And it was funny, you were even telling me too, or maybe it was just the people around me. Everyone was like freaking out. My mom was freaking out. She's like, you're gonna starve because I'm already like thin, I'm fit, so she was like, you're gonna be skin and bones, there's that. And then it's funny, the woman were like, you're crazy, and the guys you could kind of tell were like, I want to do something like that. So I don't know, just it kind of like intrigues a lot of men, I think, to do something like that and be challenged physically and mentally. So going into it, they prep you along the way too. So I had some questions that I wanted to do. I wanted to personally, that was the first decision that I ever made that felt like it was for myself. And so with this desert experience, I knew I wanted to turn the chapter and stop living the same story that I was living for so long of not wanting to trust myself or not trusting myself, looking back on my past with ex-girlfriends, with ex problems that I've had, just not really knowing where it was in life. And so I wanted to turn this chapter because I'd done so much work that year. I read the most books I've ever read in my life. I um, journaled extensively to figure out what was really going on internally. And I learned a lot on how to manage and learn to use my emotions in effective ways and in ineffective ways too, because you're going to have to learn that. So going into that, I just wanted to really turn the chapter and say, when I come out of this, I want to fully become that man that I say I am and fully trust myself that X problems, yeah. Um, and really just learn like what is who and what is Albert Chavez doing on this planet. So
Oh, with that, what shift really happened? Like when you came down from the desert, what happened or how long did that shift take place? Because a decision to go, and then there's a shift that you made that I felt that we can share a little bit. I know I felt. What shift did happen with you when you came down, or the next couple of days, or that week that happened with you?
I mean, if I'm being honest, the first week was hard because when we came back, I was with you guys 2 days later, or actually no, the same day with you because you surprised me, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I had to go into work mode, and I was stressed because you're by yourself. There's no distractions. There's no stimulation, and then coming back to a world, you enter it and you feel every emotion. You feel every car going by you. You feel woman around you. That presence was different. Um, and I was overwhelmed. And then I got back to reality. I felt very calm for like 2 weeks. And then I, they call it the dark night of the soul for a reason, because once you understand and become more aware, there's this darkness that you reach a level that you've never reached before. And I literally stunted my own growth. I didn't know what to do. I had felt paralyzed for like a month, like 6 weeks probably, where there was just so much. wanting to do something, but going back to that old self. So there was this inner conflict of trying to purge the old person. And then once you get past that difficult, which is like any real problem that you face that you are very new at, you're going to face like a lot of joy in the beginning and then a huge learning curve of pain. And then once you break out of that, you will find more joy because you understand how to get through that hard stuff. And then that cycle will repeat yourself. So that's, I mean, that's how I felt for the first 3 months, was just trying to figure out how do I use all this knowledge that I gained from just being by myself and really applying what I said I wanted to apply.
So for that context, this is where I really want to talk about this topic because Albert and I, you guys can see how we interact, but it took a lot of time for us to get here. It had to do with trust. It had to do with a confrontation we had at Newport Beach one time, and then we talked a couple weeks ago about him meeting us. We met and we talked about what we wanted from each other. But this, for me, as a father, this is what's really important. Is like I knew you were going to go through that, so you have to understand this the spiritual connection. I had already gone through what Albert went through, but he's my son. I remember when I used to walk him to school, walk him to baseball practice, but now he's a man. So when he came down the hill and I saw him, I was there. You have to imagine, I felt so much compassion for him because I know what I went through. So I remember, I don't know how you felt, but for me, when I saw you, I was nervous because I didn't know who you were going to become or who you were going to be. And I felt like I was going to lose my little boy.
Mm.
And I knew there was going to be a shift. And I was like, fuck, he's never going to be the same again because I know I wasn't. But then hearing your story now about when the demon happened, see, my demon happened there. Your black, my black, the black soul happened there. Yours happened afterwards. And a lot of reasons why I don't know, but my connection with you was like, fuck, like I know what that man went through now. And now you're my son. So for me, it was an immediate connection that I never had. I've never had with anybody in my life because now you're not just a brother. You're not just another man. Like you're my son. So for me, that was my ultimate connection with you at that point.
Yeah, and it's again for me, you have
Like
to go through hard
stuff,
stuff with
people
people
that you
you
want
want in
in
your life
life,
to
feel
feel
connected with
with them.
them. That's partly, I think, going back to our family is like in other families, is maybe that's why nowadays we don't feel as connected because everyone goes off and does their own thing. So this is all new. And so part of the reason why I believe that we're talking about this now is also because like the formal rites of passage is not the same as it used to be generations ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt very close with you because not only did you greet me and I was shocked and confused and felt all these different emotions of love and laughter and silliness, but also like now I could leave that all behind and just embrace my being of like being me, being a man, being myself and learning that new chapter of what that means between me and you.
They were excited for us because they knew some of the background. And so like when I was out there, I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't talking to anybody. I remember telling some of the guides, I want my son to do this. I want my son-in-law to do this. I want the men in our family to do this because I knew without enrolling you guys that it would be something that would be shift a shift change. And but I couldn't do it for you. And this is the big thing about being parents. Or we're talking about these guys is like this is the role of parents that I think that are having that they're getting misconstrued is our role as parents isn't to control our kids. It's to prepare them for life, to prepare them to be the people they need to become. And I got to witness and be a part of that process organically and systematically, by the way. Right. And so I mentioned this because I think this is a really interesting part in our relationship to where it then allowed us once we got back and if you remember, like I was with you and I was with you for a couple of days I was hurting for you because I knew how hard it was for me to get back into society because I had a I had this it was so quiet when I was there. I had this ringing in my ear for 3 weeks. Your experience was different because you had wind. I had silence. So when I came back, everything was like I couldn't listen to music. It was too loud. Their voices were too loud. Everything was so magnified. So that, again, that's another connection I had with you was like I knew that you were going through something that I didn't know because it was a different environment. It was cold. It was hot where I was. It was windy. Your elements were different than mine, yet your experience was different than mine. So for me, not just as a parent, right, but as a comrade and a brother and a parent, I got to experience all that with you, and that just allowed me to have more compassion for you as well.
So, like, you've told multiple like iterations of
Your
like your
story
story.
with the desert, like when you came back, now looking back, it's been 4 years, but after that initial first part, was it hard for you to like interact with me and Kaylee and Alyssa?
Oh, it was easier. The reason why it was easier is because I got to let that ego part of me go.
Mm.
So when I came back, what I realized, what I was doing wrong, I was holding on to beliefs that weren't mine. I was holding on to family trauma that wasn't mine. And this facade of how I needed to be as a parent is like, I just need to be the man, the father that I needed for me to be. That's why I said it from day one when I started shifting. I needed to be a different person. And that also means interacting with you. I needed to be more open. I needed to be more forgiving. I needed to be more transparent. I needed to be more vulnerable. And the desert opened me up so much because of my broken leg, which I thank God every day for doing that. It allowed me to surrender
Mm.
of not having all the answers and just being open. And that's what I got from the desert. It's just the surrendering part of the ego and letting go of what happened in the past. And I wasn't expecting you guys to come back. That allowed me to show up way differently for you guys.
And that's something we've talked on a lot too, is realizing that like when you make that change for yourself, the branches that it hits is for everyone else too. Something I'd love to explore more down the line is the new uh, dichotomy of finding what is good for the individual and what is good for the group. Because I think that would be interesting to touch on more is what is that going to do when you're only focused on yourself so much that then you can't focus on everyone else? Because there is some degree where you have to take responsibility. And where does that also lead to as well with everyone else that's impacted in your life to grow as a team? Because the shift that I am making right now is working on that dichotomy because it's really interesting now where I think everyone is very focused, which is it's something that we have to deal with is everyone wants to work on themselves so much that they don't know how to interact with each other along with social media interactions, all these new forms of communication is just so critical. Is how do we do that when we don't know when that's not our main form of communication nowadays?
I agree. Talk about relationships. Like I think it's when people say I need space because I need to be by myself, it's bullshit. Like you can do it in the relationship. You can do it with your family. You can do it with people. It's an excuse to not have to deal with it. So on the other side, people are avoiding their own issues and want to have solitude because they don't want to deal with the conflict that's in their life. And that's with a lot of people. So you are correct. People are using solitude and aloneness as a way for them to avoid what's happening as opposed to learning. I'm not saying that you shouldn't leave quote unquote toxic relationships. I hate that word, by the way, because you're toxic as well. But how do I learn how to cope and manage with people? But I have to learn my triggers. See, people get upset with me when I say this. Like when I trigger you, if I say something that triggers you, it's not me. You're holding on to a belief system or something that happened to you that you're taking personally, and it's a wound that you should be aware of that's still there, right? Again, I used to get triggered at stupidest things about like cups being left on counters. Why the fuck am I getting mad at cups being on the counters? Well, because I used to get my butt kicked if I left my food on the counter. So I would use that as a way of, well, you're disrespecting me. How am I disrespecting you? Right. So it's these belief systems that we come and play with are our triggers because we haven't dealt with them. So your trigger is your notification that you're still wounded by something that happened in your past with a belief system that you're still holding on to.
Yeah, it's
Again, that's part of the quantum shift too, is like, what are we going to do to actually evolve over time, right? And so with this rites of passage that we both did and experience is like now we could actually be and see each other eye to eye. I think that's another thing we really need to reiterate on is like whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you're wanting to face, is like I think understand what you going through that will do for someone else and what is that going to do for your relationship. It can be as small as like you said, the cup situation that you just mentioned, or it could be as huge as like not knowing how to trust your partner, your friends, your family. And that's a huge like theme that's going on right now is not knowing how we can be open with each other because there's no trust in ourselves that we're going to make that decision and also accepts that our friends, our family, our relationships can also push us away. And that's very, it's gonna hurt at times. And it's also gonna liberate us to want us to be more vulnerable with each other.
No, those are all good points. And, I think no one's asked a question on here, but I get this a lot. It's like, so how can you start trusting people, right? How can I trust you? It's not about me trusting you. It's about, are you going to show up to show trust? And am I trusting of myself, right? Because sometimes we blame other people for mistrusting when they're giving us the signs already. So we have to take responsibility. I have to take responsibility for how I view you, and but you also are showing me how you show up. So if I'm still accepting how you're showing up and I'm viewing you a certain way, I have to take responsibility why that mistrust happened. Honestly. And I think that's what the biggest shift that I've had to do is really take a look at every single person that's left my life. Even my sister, my dad, all that stuff. I still take ownership of what I did, but then I have to let it go to where I can't control the outcome that they did, right? And so this is where the attachment for me has had to really, it's really gotten harder and harder to let go at times because I'm still attached to certain things that people said, people did, my feelings about things. And so for me, a relationship like you and I think a lot of parents and their children have a hard time with is because there's still a lack of trust in communicating in a way, or there's a bond that's happened of how you say things, how I respond, how this yin and yang approach. We've developed these habits with each other, these codependencies on how we deal with each other, and sometimes nothing gets resolved, or we lose trust even more because we haven't dealt with the fact that I'm showing up a way for you that you're still not um, believing or trusting that's going to be safe for you.
but then how then will you be able to?
How then would you be able to if you're trying to have a relationship with me, right? Let's say we're still in that building phase, okay? So how would you go about then of wanting to build that trust if you couldn't trust me?
Great question. I know it. Ask you a question. So one of the things what we Albert and I have done is we ask questions. So I would ask you. So the old me would have been like, fuck, I left our family, I left his mom, I divorced, and I got put in jail. I would have not wanted to confront you because there would be a confrontation. But now what I've had to do is trust myself and say, I need to ask you a question. Hey, bro, listen, something's bothering me. I could see something might be bothering you. Is there something that you just want to talk to me about? And if now's not a good time, maybe we could talk another time. So really confront whatever edge is happening. That's trust and willing to hear you out is everything. Now, if I were to do that manipulative why where I would give you the opportunity and then you would say something and I would defend it, you wouldn't trust me. It's about me understanding that whatever you ask of me or you tell me, I have to take it as my responsibility to fix and or to own my part of that. So that trust comes from me being willing to ask a hard question to get an answer that I know I may not like.
Yeah, and that's that last part I think is really key
Yes.
because
a lot of times we're used to getting what we want, you know, and there's a customizable society that we have now. And so part of that is to learn how to express what you want and learn how to hear what they want too,
So
which
the
is
question people ask is, so what if I'm talking to my mom or my daughter and they're not responding the way I do? So you have a couple of choices. Either A, stay there and have a conversation. B, tell them you'll come back and have a conversation. Or C, this is the hard part. You might need to just accept them where they're at to where you might need to distance yourself from them. They may not be giving you what you need, and they may
Mhm.
need to learn your absence in order for you to have a conversation that something is bothering you
Mhm.
so that you can build that up as opposed to continually feeding them or codependency to where they're getting their way and you're hurting yourself.
Mhm.
So actually absence may be another way for them to see something's bothering you. And a lot of folks have a hard time. A lot of folks can't do that. I understand. I get it completely. But I've had to learn to be more confrontational. I'll give you an example. Not with you and I, but there's a gentleman and I that I'm coaching right now, and we had some conversation about pricing, and there was some ambiguity in the pricing, and he brought it to my attention, and so what I did is say, hey, bro, listen, my bad, you're right, it was confusing. So if it's confusing, I can see you're coming from. So how about we do what you wanted? Fair enough, because I don't want you to quit, but I'm not going to let you fail. But is that the only thing bothering you? Is that it? Is there anything else? And he's like, well, I go, then let's talk about it. So it's not just about this. There's something else. So we talked about three things.
Mhm.
I'm like, go, we're going to handle this. We're going to settle this. We're going to settle this. Is there anything else that's bothering you that's going to prevent you from not moving forward? He's like, no. I go, shook his hand. Great. Thank you for being honest with me. And I'm really sorry that I was not clear and there was some ambiguity. Are we good? He's like, we're good. So something like that I would have never done before because I would have been afraid of them walking away or getting my feelings hurt. I'm a human being, but my point is I've had to really learn how to ask a difficult question in the combat of battle, one on one, in order to get an answer so that I can feel that there's trust gained by asking a hard question.
Mhm. That's a huge thing too, is like learning to be okay with it. Like I notice even from me from time to time is once I ask a question, I'll want to like rush into answering it for them. And that's something that I think a lot of young people I've noticed as well do because they want to not feel that empty space. So that way it's like almost easier to get rejected by yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how that happens is like sometimes you have to be okay with the uncomfortable pause. Sometimes you have to be okay with that and that's I'm not just talking about space, I'm talking about with relationships, that pause in relationships, then we can like figure out the ambiguity like what you just explained because in those questions and not wanting to, or in that space, and there's not a desire to ask more questions, then we just are just sweeping it under the rug and keep going and not taking a second to fall. Like I think you told me a year or two ago, like you're okay with just sitting on the ground when you fall, just for a little bit, and just pause and be okay with it, and then analyze, ask the questions that are needed, and then you can go explore again.
Another question for you. So we talked a lot, guys, about the desert, and then Albert and I went on our first father-son trip last year, ever, first ever. And what's up, Dave? And him and I went to San Diego, and something happened. Another shift happened for us. So we did his desert experience last year, and I remember calling him. I go, hey, let's go to San Diego. He's great. And for me, just to let you know, like I wrote my book 30 days before we went down, so that's another subject. And but for me, meeting him down there and him spending 5 days, we've spent 5 days together in San Diego by ourselves. For me, what shift happened for me is that you and I got for the first time as men got to hang out together, and we just got to bro it out. And I wasn't drinking; I haven't drinking almost 2 years. And I don't know if you drank that trip, but all I know is that for me, it was a confirmation that you and I were on this path, parallel path together. I'm curious what happened with you during that time because I felt more, I felt even, I felt like we were running together now. Like it wasn't just dad going, it was like you and I now were in this space of in a direction where we wanted to take our family and we wanted to be better men. What was going on with you?
I mean, we talked about this project then too.
Yeah.
And so it was just cool that we were able to do that. Like we'd never done it before. You use it with family or with other people. And so it was just, again, use the word confirmation and really just trusting that like we could just hang out and just have a good time. We didn't need to go party. We needed to, we just chilled at the beach for a couple of days, went to a luau one night, and just relaxed by the beach and just had a good time. And we went to like Old Town, just explored some of the places that we used to, but now we could just enjoy each other's company. Like it felt like you were just coming down here and we were just having a good time. And so it feels like I used it last week, but it feels like it's not forced anymore. It's almost just a part of our interactions day to day. And I think a lot of times, like since we're both going on our own journeys right now of like how we want to market ourselves and be like just brand ourselves more. This is uh, just reiterating the fact that like we can just talk and just ask questions. And if there's something going on, we can do that in person or over the phone.
So interesting for me, I'll share this with everybody, is it was the first time that I heard you really proclaim your love for your family. Like you were like, Dad, this is what I think we should do. It was the first time that I actually, I'll share a story with you. So when you got back from the desert, what I remember the most, we're in Visconti's restaurant, is everybody was curious about your trip. And I sat back, bro, and I was like, the baton has been shifted. Like you have it. Because you were looked up as a man with the whole family. They were looking at you and they were interacting with you way differently. It was like this love, but it was also curiosity. It was pride. It was honor. They were honoring you. And that was the first time I sat back and I'm like, wow, like I just saw this happen. So when we got down to, I don't know if you saw that, but I witnessed that. And then when we were in San Diego, what I also saw and I felt from you was the first time you're like, Dad, I know you've gotten us this far, but I want to help us get this far. And for me, this is where the legacy part comes in, which is part of my book too. I've never experienced that before. So for me, it was really this cool place as a dad to sit and actually hear you want to do this and hear you want to be a leader. And you were doing it not just by your words, example. So I got to witness that and experience that.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
another
another
side
side
effect
effect
of that
of
desert experience was just wanting more of not just me and you. Um, I remember it was shortly afterwards, like the word legacy was coming around a lot, and me and you had talked about it briefly of like what we wanted to really build and what we thought about family. And then I think afterwards was when I realized that I'm ready to have a family, but it's not going to be for like now it's in the foreseeable future. It's still 5 to 7 years away, but now it's like instead of it feeling like it's so far away, it's within arm's distance, you know? And so now we get to build this, we get to really lay the foundation of what it means to like have that ripple effect. And so I wanted to not only just have it between me and you, but where does that go for my kids down the line? Where does that mean for Kaylee and Alyssa, And because I knew how much more important it was to me and you to really just double down on our relationship because once we understand our relationship more, it's going to make it easier for everyone else to want to be a part of that as well too.
No, man, I love you say that because you know what? Well, here's what I heard is you were able to just make a decision for yourself that you have now a blueprint for yourself. Like this is what I want out of my life. I want to not just give more, I want to be more, but I also want to have more. Not just materialistically, but experience being father, experience, but you got to visualize in your own way now. You saw something different. And I think what's really important, everybody, to hear this is like this just doesn't happen overnight. Like this doesn't happen overnight. There's some serious conversations that him and I have had. There's some serious one-on-one conversations that I've had. There's some serious vulnerability that I have actually had to have with him so that I could leave it all on the table so that he understands that I'm just a little boy that's grown up as well. But I have experiences. And now if he can learn from my experiences, he can now elevate his experience. Now, when he has a kids and sons and daughters, now he has a different mindset because this can happen. This conversation can happen. We can be different. We can be vulnerable. We can have accessibility to each other. And that is so profound because I've never had that. I never had that. And so now we get to experience this together and we get to evolve and we get to shape and Kaylee's evolving, Alyssa's evolving, Michael's evolving, everybody's evolving right now. And so we're all getting to see your mom and her husband are evolving. Everybody's elevating at different levels because I think that we have conscientiously decided that we want more out of our family. So we're open to new things and new experiences together.
Yeah, feel like that. We feel the
What, 3 or 4 Thanksgivings together
Yeah.
now as a whole family,
Yeah.
which is amazing. I never thought that would
So,
happen.
so explain that real quick, so everybody. What does that really mean? We spent Thanksgivings together.
We is me, my dad, my 2 sisters, my brother-in-law, Brielle now, my sister's mom and dad, which is yeah, and then his mom and dad, which is my brother-in-law's parents, and then my mom and her husband have all gotten together, which if you would have told me that 10, 15 years ago, would have been like, you're not.
6 years ago, there's no
Yeah,
it's happening.
yeah. And so it's just, again, kudos to you for being okay with that, because I'm sure that takes a lot of just like courage and also just awareness of where we are at, because you've expressed lots of times that you wanted the kids to be involved with the holiday traditions. And it's for everyone that's had divorced parents, it's the holidays are fun and it's chaotic when you have not only just multiple families to go over, but even just if you have a regular family with everything with parents that are together, there's just a lot that happens during the holidays. And so you helped us in wanting to offer up your home and have a place that we could all just get together. And
So
also,
what
mom,
for you though? What have you experienced being able to have this effect of everybody being in one house? What's come up for you?
I think it's just we get to see the small moments more. Since we have more time, we don't have to move around as much. Everyone feels more calm. They feel more light because they don't have to run around. And so I feel like I'm more connected to everyone because we get to really just like laugh and enjoy each other's time, because when we're ready to go, we get to go. And when the food's done, we don't feel rushed to leave. So it just everyone feels more relaxed, and I feel more relaxed when we're able to be with each other.
And I think that's the last part I wanted to get is like the relaxation. That's the feedback I got from Kaylee, from Melissa. It's like, thank you, Dad. I know your mom and I we've talked about this several times now about being able to just experience everybody together. And that's the guy. This is the message that we want to give is like it doesn't happen overnight. Is it hard? Yes, but I had to realize it's not about me. A lot of you
Mhm.
parents are making it about you. It's not about you. It's about what environment are you providing for your family? And I grew up in that family where it was tense. It was overwhelming. We did that to you and Alyssa and Kaylee at some point in time where there was just a lot of tension. And what we found was just organically, once Brielle came in the world, it's like, why are we doing this? Let's just spend time together. Now, your mom and I we talked about it later, but her and I just for some reason came to some organic reason, like let's just do it together. Yeah, it's hard, but that's not about us anymore. So I really appreciate you saying that because it really is. It's beautiful. I get to experience all you guys as opposed to I got 3 hours here, 1 hour here, and by myself. How about we spend 8 hours together and like go through the whole gamut of the emotions and experience, and then everybody leaves and they're full.
Being themselves. And then also Brielle gets to see a family too. Like that's what it is. It's not really about you. It's about like our generation, our offspring, and Brielle, she's our granddaughter, your granddaughter, my niece, and she's able to see everyone, and we don't do that often. So yeah.
And it's a great topic, and I don't know what more you want to go down, but I know it's a lot. But the main message that we wanted to really that I wanted to give is you can have massive shifts in your family, but I'm going to say this out loud. It starts with the parents. The parents, in my opinion, have to be the leaders and have to be the ones that put their egos down. And I see so many moms and dads, and it's about this and that. Believe me, I've been there. But at the end of the day, your kids don't give a shit about your money. They don't give a shit about what cars you have or what you do for a living. All they care about is your time and your attention. That's it. I don't care if you're 10, 5, 20. That's all they care about. And so Albert and I being able to give this gift to you of that it is possible. It does take work. And yeah, we're going to have conflict, but I literally he was the first guy that I called today
Mhm.
when that wouldn't have happened 4 years ago. It wouldn't have happened. So for me to have the trust, it's like, I'm going to call my dude because I know he's going to receive me and be there for me. I don't
Mhm.
have a spouse. I don't have a girlfriend. It's part of the process, but I'm just saying he was the first guy I thought about. Then I called Kaylee. So it's just, dude, I just want to thank you for really allowing me to be me, but
Mhm.
also allowing me to be me in my worst times and my bad times, but also for you to be able to work on you so that it's not a conflict between us.
Mhm. Well, I love you very much. It's awesome to just continue like asking questions and learn more because I think even just sharing your rites of passage journey today, it takes me back, um, because we don't know where it's going to go from here, and it's all temporary right now. So we get
Okay.
to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep building.
Yes, sir, man. Well, that's all I got. Anything else? You good?
No, that's it. I feel like again, this is why we do it. We want to continue just being open with each other because in the context of our fathers and relationship, it wasn't always like this. And we've reiterated that multiple times. We're going to continue that. And the more that we do, it's going to help not only fathers and sons, but the whole family and how we can just be more open with each other. And hopefully it ripples to your friends and other aspects of your life.
Hey, man. I love you, man. And thanks for being there for me. And if anybody has any topics they want us to cover, let us know. I know we have a great, you want to talk about next week and what we might be talking about?
Let's hold off until the
Okay.
rest of the week. And then, but yeah, we have I guess we'll share it. Yeah. Well, it's about resilience and how we want to just share some of the inner child stuff that we've been dealing with and how we've used that to propel our lives forward. So love you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining.